Gadzooks, Biden's apology to Native Americans by Andrew Callaghan. I don't know what this video is about, so that's going to be my intro. Jump right into it.
It brings happiness, joy, a little bit of sadness.
I formally apologize.
You see the elders, some of them crying because they went to boarding school themselves.
Federal Indian boarding school policy will always be a significant mark of shame on American history.
I went there, no native language to be spoken at the school, or we get a paddle.
The school had a homemade electric chair.
Same thing happened to me. They tried to let us forget our language, but we never did.
My grandparents have gone to boarding school. I went to college at a post-Indian boarding school on Indian School Road in Phoenix. And I'd like to think that my grandfather would still be here today if he was not a survivor of federal Indian boarding school. He did commit. And so this is a very deeply rooted issue.
I say that we take everybody out of California and just give it to the Native Americans. We don't need California anyway. I've never even been there.
Most horrific chapters in American history. You should be ashamed.
Hello, my name is Jake Frawa. I'm filling in for Andrew today. I am from the Pueblo of Jemez, federally recognized tribe.
Not getting Andrew today.
And right now we are standing in Arizona. So Biden decided to come to the Gila River Indian community to apologize for the boarding school policies that the U.S. government implemented.
I'm heading to do something that should have been done a long time ago.
Tens of thousands of Native children were traumatized.
Everybody, I'm sorry. Okay, bye.
Abused, reprimanded, and even murdered to implement and assert assimilation.
More than 900 children died while in custody at these boarding schools.
It lasted for about 150 years, yet the after effects of that are still here.
But the federal government has never formally apologized until today.
Let's talk about the schools Biden's apologizing for. The primary goal of residential boarding schools, whose stated slogan was actually kill.
Are they doing anything except for apologizing? Or is apologizing like, all right, we're done, that's it. Now you can give us the rest of your land, right?
Kill the Indian, save the man was to cause Native children to assimilate into American culture during westward expansion, a time during which the western frontier was rife with bloody conflict between colonial armies and tribes like the Lakota, Sioux, and Apache who fought tooth and nail to protect their land. It was in territories that were
Well-known fact, there are helicopters named after the Apache.
Seized by colonial armies that the boarding schools began. After the schools were built, the first generation of Native children were systematically separated from their families, shipped off, often hundreds of miles away, and placed into what are essentially cultural concentration camps, with the primary goal being linguicide, language death, the complete abolition of native tongues, which would stop children from being able to communicate with elders, thereby cutting off the transmission of oral history between generations.
Generations of Native children stolen, taken away to places they didn't know, with people they never met, with spoken language they had never heard, their clothes taken off, their hair that they were told was sacred was chopped off, their name literally erased, replaced by a number.
Many kids at these schools, typically at the hands of missionaries, endured neglect, abuse, and torture, and much of the brutality administered.
Sounded like Hitler really took a liking in what we did, and he was like, you know what, I'm gonna do it too.
By the schools came as a direct punishment for things like wearing traditional jewelry, and of course, uttering a word of
I say we. My people didn't do this. My people were in Ireland at this time.
native language.
Children abused, emotionally, physically, and sexually abused, forced into hard labor. Some put up for adoption without the consent of their birth parents. Some left for...
I also have some Native American relatives in my bloodline. Direct bloodline, direct lineage. My grandma's grandma was full-blooded Native American. I forget what the people were called. It starts with a C, from western Arkansas. Caddoan? Is it Caddoan? Might be.
For dead,
sounds right.
Unmarked graves. And for those who did return home, they were wounded in body and in spirit.
The first school opened in 1879 in Pennsylvania, and by 1925, 83% of all school-age Native children were attending boarding schools, bringing the total number of enrollment to above 55,000 students, which gradually increased until 1978.
We have called these hearings today to begin to define the specific problems that American Indian families face in raising their children.
Following decades of activism by groups like the American Indian Movement and so forth, Congress passed the Indian Child Welfare Act, which gave Native American parents the right to refuse having their children enrolled in boarding schools. And almost as soon as this option was given, the vast majority of schools shut down due to lack of enrollment and were soon taken over by the Bureau of Indian Affairs.
Of course it
That being
was.
said, survivors of these schools are still among us, mostly now in their mid-70s. Here's an interview we conducted several months
Hopefully, they can just keep pushing it back until they all die and they don't ever have to speak of it again. That's what they're hoping for.
ago at Paradise Valley Community College in Arizona with our friend Kenneth's grandma, who is an elder from the Navajo or Diné Nation and attended boarding schools in Arizona from kindergarten to 12th grade.
I went there.
What was the name of the school?
Cottonwood Day School.
Little actual little known fact about the Navajo. They were code talkers for the military. I read a book called Code Talkers, highly recommend, where they were being trained for the military to talk in codes, talk in their native language, so that enemies didn't know what they were saying, because they didn't know who the Navajo Indians were.
Donald Leifer from Los Angeles, that was the teacher there. And he was the one that told us no native language to be spoken at the school. They have to scrub our mouths with soap, or we get a paddle, or, we kneel down on a rice if we say something bad in Navajo. Not bad, but just saying, this is who I am. My name is Nana Manson, and I'm from Blue Gap, Arizona. I was born 1942-45. My sixth generation grandmother raised me. She went on a long walk. It was 1864. The Navajo was forced to go down to Fort Sumner, take that longest walk. She was born on the way up.
We just like to make the natives walk, didn't we? Trail of Tears, the long walk. How many more of these?
Up there, and she survived. And then coming back, she was like about 5 years old, and that's when they have that treaty signed, 1868.
So if you even spoke any Navajo at school, there would be an actual physical punishment.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be administered by a teacher?
No, one of them would be our dorm mate. Other girls.
I thought Andrew Callaghan wasn't going to be in this video. I guess that was just one day was at the beginning.
That you're going to school with or other students. When I was going to school at boarding school, I said my grandmother's name in Navajo, her Navajo name. I said that, and my dorm mate, she told me, you got to go down the canyon. And she had one of those Timeracs, and she equipped me with it. And she said, don't ever, ever say your grandmother's name. And they tried to let us forget our language, but we never did. I never did.
What was your grandmother's name in Navajo?
It means fat lady.
As illustrated by this interview, the legacy of residential schools is very much something that still lives with these tribal communities, not only through the lived experiences of elders, but also baked into the DNA of their descendants. I know epigenetics is a bit controversial, but I believe that trauma, especially when experienced collectively on a grand scale, is genetic and gets passed on to future generations like alcoholism, drug addiction, or dyslexia. But whether you believe that or not, there's still a direct correlation between language death and depression rates. A study done in Alberta, Canada, where the re-education policy was more or less the same as in the US, showed that suicide rates were over 6 times.
I think we should do some actual education for these people and put up schools that teach them about their past, and not just have reservations doing all of this. We need to actually have these services available, but not government run services. There needs to be somebody who has a company that doesn't mind losing money to run one of these services, because he just loves to do it. That's what I'm gonna do. When I got the money, I'm gonna be wasting it, man. Gonna be wasting it on things like that.
Higher in Native communities where less than 50% of the population spoke their ancestral language. So for many Native Americans, Biden simply acknowledging this negative canon event was a very validating gesture.
The historic trauma that the tribes have gone through, we appreciated what he did.
Just hearing him talk so detailed about what the boarding schools really were, what they all did, it brought us hope. It brought me hope that he can do something for those causes, he can actually help us. It brings joy.
But many in attendance did not share their sentiment. Midway through.
Yeah, what else did he do? Just talk? I need to know. You gonna talk about it in this video, or is it just gonna be Native Americans talking good or bad about Biden? I'd really like to know.
Through Biden's speech, he was crashed by pro-Palestine protesters, who bravely crossed one colonial border to protest another.
What about the people in Gaza?
Let her talk. Let her talk.
For obvious reasons, the protester was swiftly escorted off premises by police.
Oh, no, let her go.
But Jake thought it would be a good idea to follow them out to get their perspective.
How does that relate to...
But first, a word from our sponsor.
Wow. This guy, this is why I watch his videos. Because he went to this event, lady got kicked out, and he decides to follow her. That's crazy. That's journalism, man. That's real journalism.
Many of you know, one of the mission statements here at Channel 5 is to provide raw, unbiased coverage of news events as they unfold, with a particular emphasis of cutting through the bullshit narratives pressed by the evil mainstream media. But what if I told you there's a service that we actually use to research stories before we go into the field? Well, guess what? That's true. That service is called Ground News, a dope-ass news aggregate that compiles thousands.
Quick thoughts on Ground News real quick. I like it, but I don't think it's organized enough. I don't really know what's going on in the app. Maybe I need to use it a little longer, but I don't really know what's going on. And you have to pay to follow more than 100 things. Not really into that. I just think X is better for news. As much as it pains me to say it, because I really hate X, but it's, in my opinion, by far the best social media app. But I hate all social media, so it's not really saying much.
Thousands of articles every day and ranks them in terms of bias from left to right, so you can see how different sides of the that'll break you out of your echo chamber. I can pull up an article right here about margin covering the story compared to the brand for the magnitude of news media coverage, and of course tracks the corporate ownership associated with it.
Another problem with it is I'm not Democrat or Republican. I don't really fall on the political spectrum. I'm anti-political. So if the articles are political at all, then I'm not gonna like them.
The mainstream press. But full disclosure, ground.news/channel 5. All right, guys, back to the res.
I'm not, a tribal member or native. I'm Chicana, Mexican American, but I came out here because
close enough to me. That's Native American too.
Just yesterday, I heard that Genocide Joe is going to be making an apology for the Indian boarding schools. It just seems ironic. While he's apologizing for that ethnic cleansing, that genocide that took place, at the same time, he's enabling a genocide in Palestine right now.
Yeah, but what does that really have to do with the Native American stuff? Time and place, you know? Like one issue at a time. You can't solve 10 issues in one little speech. That doesn't even mean anything anyway.
Now, the number of civilian deaths and the number of babies killed and children being killed and women being killed and the ones who are missing under the rubble is disgusting. That our tax dollars are paying for this, all of it. For them to be supporting a right-wing extremist regime like Netanyahu's in Israel.
Well, in fact, they're supporting both sides. Because they want that war to keep going on because they're making money. So much money.
Israel's government is like supporting Trump. It doesn't make any sense. They're Democrats. They should be better.
What do you think of public apology on the forced assimilation of Native American children going to boarding schools? How does that relate to?
Well, of course. I mean, one genocide begets another genocide, right? It's white imperialism that goes back for centuries.
Not white imperialism. No, it's not even imperialism. It's authoritarianism, straight up disguised as all these other systems that they trick people into liking.
It's the same kind of thing. The settlers took the water years ago in the Gila River Reservation.
A little known fact about the Colorado River is that American Indian tribes own rights to about a quarter of the river. In reality, for most tribes, there are only paper rights, not amounting to water they can actually use.
They had native plants that they lived on that were healthy, and they had a good water supply, and the settlers, very similar to what's happening in Israel, that the settlers stopped the water.
These obelisks or pillars or whatever these things are straight out of Cyberpunk. They look cool. I like wherever they're at. That's a cool place to stand. It's like under a bridge. It looks sci-fi.
very similar to what's happening in Israel, that the settlers stopped the water.
In the late 19th century, upstream users had diverted the Gila River to the point that it no longer flowed on the reservation.
And, you know, the reservation is still, they got the water rights back, but it takes a long time to recover from all the damage that was done.
We're less than 2 weeks away from the official election day. Like, why did he wait until now to apologize?
They are very
She knows why. Everybody knows why. It's not a secret.
aware that they are losing the Arab and Muslim American community as a voting sector. This current dynamic 2 weeks before the election is when you finally want to give a public apology. That screams exploitation. That screams desperation.
Why wait until now to actually come to tribal lands? You know, he hasn't done that. As far as I'm aware. I mean, you can fact check me.
I think there was maybe one time before where there was a event at the Grand Canyon.
Oh, when they declared the national monument?
Yeah.
Yeah, they wheeled him out there, gave him an ice cream cone, I'm sure.
Who is this lady? I need to know. She's based. She might be a leftist, but she's almost there, man. She's like this close to being an anarchist.
As we covered in a previous video called Havasupai Uranium Mine Protest, the last time Biden traveled to tribal lands in Arizona was to formally promise that he would protect the tribal lands around the Grand Canyon from uranium mining, a promise that he would break less than a year later, when the federal government allowed a Canadian energy corporation to evoke a gold rush legal loophole to open a potentially toxic uranium mine directly above a freshwater aquifer that provides the Havasupai tribe with all of its drinking water, leading to health concerns and panic among tribal members.
You know, I've seen a lot of livestock lose their lives. I've actually been scared to drink water, and I've been pretty much going into tap water, bottled waters and stuff myself because...
Welcome to the club. I haven't drank tap water in years because my water is cloudy and has stuff floating in it.
I've heard people have been getting sick, and what we thought was clean water, being laid up in the hospitals for weeks at a time due to the contaminated waters.
And at the same time, we have still political prisoners like Leonard Peltier behind bars. He was denied clemency. Biden could change that right now if he wanted to. There's still unmarked graves all over the land here and all over the country from those Indian schools. And it's like, where are the reparations? Where's the justice? It just seems like bullshit.
Despite the similarities pointed out by the Palestine protesters, many tribal members feel iffy about their presence.
I kind of get that perspective. The younger me kind of would have felt the same in a way. But as I've gotten a little bit older and kind of understand the bigger picture a little bit, I just know it's definitely not fixing everything, but for the U.S. government to say I'm sorry for anything.
On record, right?
Yeah, in front of people. Yeah, exactly. It means a little something at least. I definitely feel like my generation took a hit. It's like my grandmas and my parents kind of shied away from teaching us the culture. Not that they were not proud of, you know, who they were. They definitely were. I always remember my great grandma.
It's like things are different now, kind of mentality. Like, we have to change, we have to move on with the times. The old ways are lost, and I understand that. And that's such a sad thing, man.
I mean, always teaching me words almost like it was like a little secret. Like, oh, this is how you say this in Oneida or that in Oneida. Like, and she would smile like she was like, it was her little resistance, you know. Teaching me words. I feel like I got it a little secondhand. That's where I still feel it. Took a little while for me to kind of be a little more bold and proud about who I am. I was always the only Indian kid in whatever school I went to, and that was kind of hard, so.
It is messy. There are parts of me that honor the sentiment and the energy that comes with a public apology for those who have been waiting for millennia. And part of me is also filled with rage, therefore grief, and that is how I am processing this moment.
Many tribal leaders hoped that Biden would actually take the time to meet with them during his apology visit, as the White House had organized a speed dating style, dare I say,
presidential
powwow,
promising dozens of tribal leaders, no more and no less than 30 seconds of Joe time. But President Biden abruptly canceled the meeting just minutes before his speech.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Woodenknife. I am the first female president of our tribe in Rosebud, South Dakota with Sicangu Nation. Lori Walkneagle, I'm the chief of staff for President Kathleen Woodenknife. She is our first female president for the Rosebud Sioux tribe located in the south central part of South Dakota. We were invited on Wednesday to the event with the understanding that President Woodenknife would be speaking with President Biden for 30
President Woodenknife. Native American culture is just so cool to me. I don't know. Woodenknife is such a badass name.
seconds. I didn't get to do my 30 seconds, which I really wanted to do because right now we're trying to do some things with rescinding the medals of honor from the massacre that occurred on our reservation many, many years ago.
The Wounded Knee Massacre. It was one of the worst atrocities.
I'm glad it's about to explain it a little bit because I wanted to know. I didn't know about this.
Against
I've heard about it, but I don't know about it.
Native Americans ever. The U.S. Army rode into South Dakota and slaughtered hundreds of Lakota men, women, and children.
19 medals were handed out to soldiers for the massacre at Wounded Knee.
I think
When did that happen? Hang on. What year was the massacre of Wounded Knee?
According to Wikipedia, the activists chose the site of the 1890 Wounded Knee Massacre for its symbolic value. In March, a U.S. Marshal was shot by gunfire coming from the town, which ultimately resulted in paralysis.
Well, all right.
every indigenous tribe.
1890 wasn't really that long ago. Like, some people's grandparents would have stories of their parents and grandparents.
It has the same needs. We need better health care. We need better roads. We need assistance
Welcome to the club.
with our education services, because for every $10 that an organization gets to run on through the BIA, when a treaty tribe contracts those 638s, we end up having to run on $4 and are expected to provide the same services that they can through the Bureau. We need housing. We're still living in substandard housing, where some of our people, including my mom, is living in the transitional. Now, those transitional houses were for when they were first placed on the reservations, stating that we will be transitioning you into something more sturdy, something more.
But let's send billions upon billions of dollars overseas to people that we don't know, that affect us zero. Let's send all the money to them instead of building houses for Native Americans who were here first.
Warm, but we don't. We have walls that are very thin, that have very little ice. What is the word? Insulation in the housings. They're not even set on foundations. They're set on wood. So our housing is a big issue. Our education is a big issue. Our law enforcement is a big issue. Our mental health is a big issue.
The housing really does play into the mental health, because if your house is not in order, then you're not in order.
Physical health through IHS. Those are issues that I think that each reservation, no matter across the nation, experience.
And diabetes is so bad in the Native American population right now. Don't know if anybody knows this. Look it up. It is serious. It's like a serious issue. It's like diabetes in the Native American population.
According to CDC, American Indian and Alaska Native adults are almost 3 times more likely to have type 2 diabetes compared to white adults.
There you go.
Because we're not funded equitably the way that other programs are funded.
You want to know why they're 2-3 times more likely? Because they're more poor, and the poorer you are, the worse your food is, the more full of preservatives it is. I bet they have a higher cancer rate too. What's the cancer rate of Native Americans?
According to CDC, the overall rate of getting cancer is more than twice as high among non-Hispanic American Indian and Alaska Native people in the Southern Plains region. 612.
There you go. There you go. They're down bad, man.
And the other things that
They need the real reparations.
Is everywhere is the meth epidemic. We're losing so
That
many
too.
of our families to meth.
Meth is an evil spirit. It's a brother to the suicide spirit.
I know all about meth. And how it... Damn, dogs are barking. I forgot what I was talking about.
And the alcohol. They're all evil spirits that want to consume our kids.
Yeah, I know all about meth and how it destroys a family because I grew up around it and it destroyed my family.
They want to take our kids from us. And so it's up to us to not let that happen.
You know, within our culture, we look at the next 7 generations with what's going on with the meth addictions, the meth coming onto our reservations. People come there because it's easy for them to distribute hide it, basically hide on the reservation because we're a sovereign nation and our laws are different within the reservation versus off the reservation. And the meth is now mixed with fentanyl, and it's a danger. I think they call it like the white China.
Fentanyl is raining on our reservation.
I wonder why they call it white China. Probably because of where it comes from.
Weatherwax Jr. is a tribal leader here and says much of the drug activity on his reservation stems from Mexican cartels selling to community members
That are being paid by China.
and using their homes, often in remote areas, as distribution hubs.
But I also think that we need to be funded at the same levels because we are a sovereign nation. In fact, we were talking about that this morning when I was in grad school. I had mentioned that sovereignty is something that we really don't have because we can define it, we can describe it, but it's our unicorn because does it really exist for us as a people?
Channel 5 Live worldwide, Hollywood and Vine.
Fuck the authority, Channel 5 News.
Channel 55. We don't fuck with custers. 5 is the best number.
Is this going to affect your vote?
Yes, it's going to affect my vote.
Was there any conversation about maybe what they're going to try to do now?
Just more of implementing the real history of what really happened and not just neglecting what happened and how the boarding schools didn't happen. They want to implement into our society today to tell the real truth and what happened.
Awesome.
Well, there you have it, JDs and Littlemen. I don't think Biden actually did anything except apologize. That's what it seems. These people need help. Black people need help. Actual Indians need help. Not the rich ones, like the poor ones. There are poor Indians in America, believe it or not. There are poor Asians. White people need help. Americans just need help. All of us. Every single one of us. You know what? Let's even throw in the rich people. A lot of rich people need some fucking help too.